What if your deepest suffering isn't from being alone, but from being seen wrongly? You speak, but they don't hear. You feel, but they don't notice. You show your truth, and the world hands you a mask. There is a kind of pain that leaves no scars, a pain that follows those who carry something too real, too raw, too strange for the surface of things. It is the pain of being misunderstood, and it cuts in silence. For those who live from the soul, misunderstanding is not a rare event. It is the atmosphere they breathe. And yet, what if this pain wasn't punishment? What if it was part of the path? Søren Kierkegaard knew this ache well, ridiculed by the press, alienated by the people, seen as arrogant or mad. But behind the mockery was a man wrestling with eternity, a man who wrote not to impress but to awaken. He walked alone through the streets of Copenhagen, carrying truths no one asked for, and few understood. But maybe that was the point. Because some truths can't be shouted, they can only be whispered in the dark, to those willing to hear. Kierkegaard wrote of the individual, the one who stands alone, not by choice, but by necessity, because truth is a lonely thing. When you awaken to something deeper, you can't always explain it, you can't wrap it in logic. You feel it, live it, breathe it, but try to share it and watch how quickly people look away. This is not failure, this is the burden of carrying something true in a world addicted to comfort. Kierkegaard believed the most important truths couldn't be taught directly. That's why he often used pseudonyms, paradoxes, and riddles. He wanted to bypass your defenses. He wanted you to discover it, not be handed it, because real truth doesn't fit in someone else's mouth. It must be born inside you. So he wrote in spirals, in layers, in fire, and he was mocked for it. But look deeper, so were the mystics, the prophets, the poets, people who spoke from a depth that terrified the shallow, who refused to reduce the infinite to a slogan. They were misunderstood not because they were unclear, but because they were clear in a world built on confusion. You can't transfer truth like a package. You can't make someone understand what they are not ready to see. This is the paradox of awakening. Kierkegaard believed truth must be lived, not argued. He said, "Life is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be experienced." And this is why being misunderstood is inevitable. Because when you live from the soul, you are no longer trying to convince, you are trying to be. And that terrifies people who only know how to label. You say something profound. They laugh. You act from conscience. They question your sanity. You walk away from the noise and they call you broken. But maybe you're not broken. Maybe you've just stopped trying to be understood by those who don't even understand themselves. Ancient Zen masters used koans, nonsensical riddles, to point beyond the mind. Sufi poets like Rumi danced in paradox. Mystics spoke in silence, because they knew the truth isn't in the words, it's in the being. So why does the world reject those who carry depth? Because depth threatens everything shallow. Kierkegaard warned of the crowd. He said it was untruth, a force that drowns individuality, a faceless machine that fears the real, the raw, the alive. In a world obsessed with image, with certainty, with surface, the person who questions, who feels too much, who sees too far, must be labeled dangerous. So the world shrinks them, misinterprets them, pushes them to the margins. But this isn't new. Socrates was executed for corrupting the youth. Jesus was crucified for telling the truth too plainly. Nietzsche died alone, dismissed as insane. Even Van Gogh, who painted the divine in every brushstroke, was misunderstood until long after he was gone. What do they all have in common? They refused to betray their inner vision, even when it cost them everything. And maybe that's what it means to be free, to know the truth within you, and to hold it, gently, fiercely, even when no one else sees it, especially then. So what happens when you stop trying to be understood? Something unexpected, something sacred, solitude once feared, becomes your sanctuary. You stop begging the world to reflect you and begin to reflect yourself. Kierkegaard believed the individual's journey was a walk with God, alone, inward, beyond approval, beyond explanation. In solitude, you discover your own voice, your own values, your own vision. The noise fades, and what's left is something real. The mystic Meister Eckhart said, "The soul grows by subtraction, not addition." It is in the silence, the exile, the stillness, that something eternal takes root. When no one else understands you, you have a choice to shrink or to grow inward, to collapse or to deepen. And those who deepen find a kind of strength that cannot be broken. Let them misquote you. Let them twist your words. Let them invent versions of you that fit their comfort, because none of it touches what's real. The need to be understood. It's the ego's last request. But your soul just wants to be. Kierkegaard said, "Once you label me, you negate me. So let them label. Let them assume. Let them stare at your reflection and pretend they see your face. You no longer owe them an explanation. You are not here to be digestible. You are not here to be explained. You are here to walk the path your soul remembers, even if no one else can see where it leads. That is not weakness. That is power, because when you no longer need to be understood, you become unshakable." And now here is the final paradox. What if being misunderstood is not something to fix? What if it's a sign that you're waking up? Kierkegaard knew that truth often offends before it liberates, that awakening doesn't look like applause, it looks like exile. But maybe that exile is sacred. Maybe it means you are walking where others fear to tread. The great mystics and visionaries were all misunderstood, but that's not because they were wrong. It's because they saw something no one else was ready to see, and so do you. If the world doesn't understand you, good, it means you've stopped shrinking yourself for it. It means your truth has grown too large to be translated, too holy to be simplified, too real to be captured. So walk your path. Let the misunderstanding follow like a shadow. It cannot touch what's real, because you know who you are, and sometimes that's all the understanding you'll ever need. What if being misunderstood is not a weakness, but a sign you're growing? What if the more true you are to yourself, the less people will recognize you? Think about it. When you start changing, when you stop pretending, the world around you doesn't always clap. Sometimes it turns away. Sometimes it gets quiet. Sometimes you feel like a ghost in your own life. But maybe that silence is sacred. Most of us grow up learning that we should fit in, be nice, be agreeable, be understandable, and yet somewhere inside we feel something deeper, a voice that doesn't fit the mold, a calling that doesn't want to be explained. Søren Kierkegaard knew this pain. He was a strange man in a quiet city, a philosopher, Christian, a poet of the soul, but no one truly understood him, and he never asked them to because he believed something bold. The truth is not found in groups, it's found in the quiet heart of one person who dares to live differently. So what if you stopped chasing approval? What if you stopped trying to be explained? What if being misunderstood is proof that you're finally becoming real? Because the truth is this: when you walk your own path, not everyone will follow. But maybe that's not a loss. Maybe it's the beginning. Kierkegaard didn't just talk about being misunderstood, he lived it. He loved a woman named Regine Olsen, but he left her without real explanation. Why? Because he felt a weight inside him, a calling. He believed that his journey would bring pain, and he didn't want her to carry it with him. People didn't get it. They said he was selfish, cruel, cold. But the truth was different. Kierkegaard believed in something higher, a life led not by comfort but by truth. He wrote books, but not in his name. He used fake names, each one with a different voice, a different view of the world. Why? Because he didn't want to preach. He wanted people to wrestle with truth, not just agree with it. He believed that truth can't be handed to you, it has to be lived, felt, suffered through. He didn't try to be popular, he didn't try to be understood, because he knew something we forget. Sometimes the more honest you are, the lonelier the path becomes, but he walked it anyway, not to be right, but to be whole. This isn't just history, it's a mirror. How many times have you felt the same, pulled between truth and approval, love and calling, comfort and purpose? Kierkegaard reminds us, you might lose people along the way, but you'll find yourself, and that's worth everything. Kierkegaard once said something strange. The crowd is untruth. At first that sounds harsh, but look closer. Crowds don't think, they copy, they follow, they repeat. The crowd rewards the safe answer, the simple story, the familiar mask. But truth doesn't fit in a slogan. It doesn't bend to what's trending. It often sounds like nonsense until years later. Most of us spend our lives trying to be liked, to fit in, to not stand out. But slowly something dies inside. A voice, a spark, a truth.